I didn't really understand and forgive my father until after his death. Hello to my 425 subscribers and to the 5, 10, 15, 20, sometimes 100 people who watch my videos. Thank you so much for watching. Since I've been on this journey, intentionally been on this journey of transitioning from survival mode to living and thriving, there are a lot of things that I have learned and I have had a deeper understanding of. Because a part of this journey requires you to become more acutely aware of your psychology and how your past is currently programming or running your future decisions and choices. So that's something I've had to intentionally do and be very aware of and give a lot of focus and attention to. And you know, there's a saying that says you can't pick up one end of the stick without picking up the other. So naturally, if I'm looking into or trying to understand me at my core, who I truly am, without this programming that I got somewhere along the way in my life, naturally I'd have to go back to my roots, which would be my parents and my family. My relationship with my father was not particularly, and I really don't want to go, this is not about my father's life. This is just, I want this just to be about my understanding of him after the fact, after he passed. And, you know, the fact that I was able to extend grace to him at that point. It's a little sad, but it's the reality. Because after he passed was when, coincidentally, was when I really started to deep dive into and became very intentional about my journey and shifting my life, changing the results I was getting, I am getting, or was getting in my life. And coincidentally, he passed around the same time. And I started thinking, there's a previous video on my channel that I did where it talks about my father is the black sheep of his family. And after doing that video, because to prepare for that video, I had to do some, you know, some deep thoughts, and I had to really go beyond just the emotions of it all and really look at the psychology of it. And then it made me think and look at the fact that if my life is the way it is, and I had the challenges that I had because of the environment that I grew up in, imagine what he had to go through. Imagine the challenges that he was facing. Imagine the battles that he was fighting inwardly that no one knew about or cared to know about. I am not the most intellectual person, but I am not an idiot either. And I struggled for as long as I did before I understood what was really going on with me psychologically, before I was able to make sense of what was going on with me. Now imagine what he was going through. He was illiterate, couldn't read and write, and those were just some of the physical limitations that he had. Now imagine on top of that, the psychological limitations that he had to be dealing with, and he had to figure out, and which he obviously never did based on his life's journey, how it started and how it ended eventually. It's safe to say that he never really, figured it out, and he never really understood, came to the deeper understanding of his life experiences and the real meaning of why certain things were happening to him. So after he died, and I did that video, and after I did that video, and my journey took me on a deep dive through just when I gained a clear understanding of what was at work in my life as far as the survival mode programming, and the fact that everything that I had believed about myself through the lens of others was a lie. And I'm now consciously working to interrupt that programming and to reprogram and rewire my nervous system, and basically just to shift and upgrade my identity. And he never had that opportunity. He never had that chance. And while he was alive and in our interactions, the survival mode Natalie didn't have a very good relationship with her father. It was not terrible, but it also was not positive. It wasn't good. But it wasn't terrible. There are people, I'm sure, out there that have worse situations that I had to go through, but nonetheless, it was my experience. It's what I had to deal with. And so there was blame. I blamed him for a lot of things that he did and didn't do in his own life, plus in mine and my siblings' lives. And as I said before, sadly, it was only after his death that I really understood and felt real deep compassion towards him, and how much he must have been struggling, and how much he must have been fighting inwardly. The inner voices that he had to be battling of not enoughness, unworthiness, why him? Because of all his siblings, he was the only one that couldn't read and write. Imagine the mental space that puts you in, and the psychological impact that would have on your life. And then generally, I'm sure most people would say then, because him bad, why of all his siblings, he's the only one that wasn't able to read and write. But the reverse of that is also true. What happened to him? What experiences did he have? Why he was the only one that wasn't able to read and write? And to some extent, I can totally relate to that. On the opposite side of that, I can relate to that. But yeah, so I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but that's the point of this video. That's the point of this video, is that when you are in survival mode, when you are looking at the world through a lens, or through a survival mode lens, everything is different. Everything looks differently. Your interpretation of the things around you, it's different. It's more emotional than logical and psychological. And so a lot of people, including my father, lived his entire life in survival mode. Unfortunately, he was not able to break the programming. He was not able to step out of that programming. That programming ran his life until the day he died. And we know this because of his choices he made, the results that we saw in his life based on his decisions and his choices. And I probably would not have had this insight and this level of compassion. And you watching this, or some of you watching this, may say, oh, it's too late now because he's dead. I don't know what the significance of it is now. Maybe his death and me, going through this and having this understanding and this type of clarity at this point was all a part of the journey. I don't know, because one thing I know for sure now that I am having this experience is that if he had had a transformation somewhere along his journey, as in if he was able to throughout his lifetime make the shift from survival mode to living and thriving, it would have reflected on us. We would have experienced it as his children, and the people around him would have seen evidence of it. So he wasn't able to give it to me or to us in life, but he did it through his death. He did it through his death. And I am grateful. I am grateful. I did not attend my father's funeral, but that's a whole different story that I maybe one day will share on here. But for right now, that's not for the general public at this point. Maybe someday when I'm writing a memoir or a biography, autobiography. Is it autobiography or biography? Which one of them is it? I think autobiography. One of them is when somebody else writes it about you, and one is when you write it for yourself. I don't remember at this moment. I don't remember which is which. Yeah, but I wanted to share that, and the point or the message or the inspiration that I'm hoping that anyone, if it's even just one person that watches this video in its entirety, will get from it is that survival mode as a mindset is real, and it is a real psychological disorder. That just like you have ADHD, it is right there with that. It's a real psychological disorder of the mind and the way the mind works and the programming that is embedded in the individual, most likely from childhood, that colors the world in a certain way and that lays the foundation for the way you respond to life and the things that happen throughout your life, the decisions that you make, the choices that you make. It's what lays the foundation, the basis for those things. Yeah. So if you are feeling stuck or just like you're not going anywhere. No matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, you're just not seeing any results. You know, you're just working harder and harder and harder and nothing is happening. I would encourage you to examine, trying to examine whether or not you're living from a survival mode lens, because that could be the difference between your success and your failure. A lot of us settle for things, which is what I was about to do in my own life, and call it success and say, you know, this is as far as I can go based on my mindset. Because for so long I have been, you know, working hard and trying things and doing things and nothing seemed to be working. But then this one thing I will say as well, and I think there's a Bible verse that's adjacent to what I'm about to say. I don't remember the exact words, but it said, you know, do not despise your time in the wilderness. Use it wisely. When your wilderness period comes, or when you find yourself in a wilderness moment or period, do not try to run from it. Do not try to reject it. Do not try to, you know, use it wisely, because it's there for a reason. That wilderness period, if you didn't need it, it wouldn't show up. So use it wisely. All right, I really didn't mean for this video to be so heavy and so emotional, but it kind of went in that direction. But what I really meant for it, I wanted it to be most of all, was to be very honest. Was to be very honest and inspiring in one way or another, if it's even just one person that ends up watching this video in its entirety. Survival mode is real, and if you are living in survival mode and you're making your choices from survival mode, which means you're only making decisions for this moment, like, how do I survive this moment? How do I provide food for myself and my family just for this moment or just for today? That mindset is what is called survival mode mindset, and it's what our ancestors needed to survive. But it doesn't work for us in this 21st century that we're living in. So if you're living from that mindset, it is that mindset in itself that is causing the lack and limitation and hard work that you are experiencing. To my 425 subscribers, thank you for subscribing, and I do hope that when you watch this video, it will inspire you in some way or another. And to the 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 or 100 people that watch my videos, thank you so much for interacting with my content. And to the maybe 3, 4 or 5 people that have commented on any of my videos, thank you so much for interacting with my content, and I will see you on the next video.